It all started in the late afternoon of a chilly November day in Beverly Hills. The kind of day where the sunlight stretched long shadows across the streets, painting everything in shades of gold and orange. In a small pharmacy tucked between a boutique and a cafe, two lives were about to collide in a way neither could have imagined. The first was Eleanor Brooks, a 72-year-old retired nurse, standing frozen in the aisle, staring at the price tag of her prescription. $712. She held the bottle with trembling hands, counting the few crumpled bills in her wallet over and over, her mind racing for a solution that simply didn't exist. She had enough for her rent, enough for groceries, enough for utilities, but not enough for the medication that would keep her heart beating steadily for another month. And then she noticed a commotion at the end of the aisle. Someone had dropped a handful of pill bottles. The voice muttered in a thick British accent, frustrated but surprisingly soft. Eleanor turned, and that's when her eyes met his. Ozzy Osbourne, unmistakable, though subdued in sunglasses and a black hoodie, struggling to bend down and gather his spilled medications. She blinked, her heart skipping a beat, not because of fame, but because something about his vulnerability mirrored her own. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes from a body betraying itself in small, relentless ways. Parkinson's had crept into his life quietly, then roared in silence, shaking his hands, slowing his steps, reminding him of mortality with every tremor. He had come to the pharmacy on the orders of his doctor, who had been blunt. "Start your new medication today, no excuses. Every day you delay, the symptoms deepen." But now, standing here in this fluorescent-lit aisle, Ozzy's pride and stubbornness were battling the physical limitations that his age and illness imposed. Eleanor watched him struggle, her nurse instincts kicking in instinctively. Without thinking, she stepped forward, picking up a bottle and handing it to him. Their fingers brushed briefly, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of fragility, a shared understanding of what it means to fight silently against the odds. Ozzy looked up at her, a small, tired smile tugging at his lips, and said, "Thanks, love. Bloody hell, these hands won't listen anymore." Eleanor's throat tightened. She had no idea who he really was, and yet the raw human struggle in front of her resonated more than any fame could. Her name was Eleanor, but he didn't know that yet. She had spent 40 years caring for patients, many of whom had no family, no support, no one to help them fight their battles. Since retirement, her life had become quieter, lonelier, though her heart still beat with the same instinct to help wherever it was needed. Today, she was fighting her own invisible battle, surviving on a small pension, rationing her meals, paying bills that crept higher every month, and now facing the impossible price of her heart medication. As she stood there, staring at the trembling rock legend before her, Eleanor's mind wandered briefly to her late husband, Thomas, who had passed 2 years prior. He had loved music, always had a fondness for classic rock, and she knew that if he were alive today, he would have recognized the man standing before her in a heartbeat. But Eleanor didn't speak of that yet. Instead, she focused on helping him steady the bottles, ignoring the surreal thought that she was in the same aisle as the Prince of Darkness himself. Ozzy, meanwhile, was aware that someone was assisting him, though he wasn't sure if they realized who he was. His life had been defined by chaos, stage lights, adoring fans, and reckless living. But this quiet, ordinary moment was grounding in a way he didn't expect. He noticed Eleanor's worn cardigan, the way her hands held the bottle with care, the slight stoop in her posture, and suddenly he realized she carried her own burdens, silent battles, hidden from the world. He felt a strange kinship. Here was a woman fighting for life quietly, just like him, just like his younger self had fought to survive in Birmingham. Hungry, desperate, misunderstood, yet stubbornly alive. And then he heard her voice, soft, steady despite the tension. "Here, let me help you." There was a pause, a crackle in the air, almost as if both of them were holding their breath for what was about to happen. The recognition came in stages. First, Eleanor caught a glimpse of his eyes, piercing blue, a little wild, still holding a spark that no disease could fully extinguish. Then the memories flooded back. The vinyl records her husband had collected, the songs that had played endlessly on Saturday nights, the concerts they had attended together decades ago, and suddenly everything clicked. She was standing in front of Ozzy Osbourne, the Ozzy Osbourne, the man whose music had brought joy and rebellion into their lives, the man who had unknowingly been part of her happiest memories with Thomas. But now, he wasn't the rock god on stage. He was fragile, human, carrying the same kind of vulnerability she carried every single day. She swallowed hard, her chest tightening. Ozzy, on the other hand, noticed the exhaustion etched on her face. He noticed the subtle signs of hunger, of missed meals, of a life stretched thin and worn by responsibility and grief. He saw something familiar in her eyes, the same look his mother had carried during his childhood, the nights when his father lost work. The cupboards were empty, and yet she kept going, silently, without complaint. And at that moment, something shifted. He realized that fame and fortune meant nothing compared to human connection, empathy, and the ability to help someone in true need. He wanted to reach out, to do something meaningful beyond the music and the stage. Eleanor spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't get this today. I'll come back another time." Her words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, trembling on the edge of breaking. Ozzy didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her, patiently, knowing she was telling the truth. His mind raced, calculating, reasoning. There was no tomorrow for this woman. Every day without her medication was dangerous. And yet, he could see the pride in her posture, the dignity she tried to hold on to despite her hardships. He knew what he had to do. "How much is it?" he asked, finally, his voice soft but firm. Eleanor hesitated, shame flashing across her features before she whispered, $712. Monthly. The words spilled out, followed by the story of her life. Thomas's illness, dwindling savings, selling their home, living in a small studio apartment, rationing meals, hiding her struggles from her children. She had been carrying this weight alone for too long, and now, in the presence of a stranger, the dam broke. She spoke and cried at the same time, raw, unfiltered, human. Ozzy listened, silent, taking in every word, every tear, every moment of vulnerability she offered without restraint. Finally, he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. "You taught for 40 years, he said. You shaped the lives of thousands. And yet, here you are, crying over something that should never have been this hard. Something is wrong with the world, love." Eleanor's hands shook as she accepted the gesture, unable to look away from his eyes, unable to reconcile the rock star with the compassionate man before her. And then, without a word, Ozzy picked up the prescription bottles, walked to the counter, and placed both his own and Eleanor's medications on the counter together. "I'll get both," he said simply. The pharmacist, a young woman who recognized him immediately, stared but maintained professionalism. She rang up the total, $1,264. Ozzy swiped his card, covering the cost without hesitation. Eleanor tried to protest, to insist she couldn't accept this, but he only shook his head. "You helped me when I dropped my pills," he said. "Today it's my turn to help you." Her eyes welled up, tears streaking down her face as she realised the magnitude of what had just happened. In a world where people often looked away, someone had truly seen her, had understood her, and had chosen to act without seeking recognition. Before leaving, Ozzy handed Eleanor a business card with his assistant's number. "Call him tomorrow," he said. "We'll make sure you're covered. No one should have to fight this alone." Eleanor held the bag, her fingers gripping it like a lifeline. She felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope that maybe life wasn't finished with her yet. Ozzy stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the cool evening air, while she lingered for a moment, still processing the surreal encounter. He turned to her, smiled and said, "Don't let the light go out, love. Keep shining." 3 days later, Eleanor received a call from Sharon, Ozzy's assistant. The offer was unbelievable. A part-time teaching position at a school supported by their foundation, helping children with reading disabilities. The salary and insurance meant Eleanor no longer had to worry about her medication. She accepted immediately, her heart swelling with a combination of gratitude, nervous excitement, and purpose. Her life, once constrained by grief and financial strain, had taken a sudden turn toward renewal. She walked into the classroom on her first day, meeting 8 children, who each carried their own stories of struggle and resilience. As she introduced herself, she realized that teaching had never left her. That passion, that instinct to nurture, was still alive and waiting to be shared. A week later, Ozzy himself visited the school. He brought a guitar and played an acoustic version of Iron Man for the children. Eleanor watched, amazed at how the music, once a distant memory of her husband's joy, now connected her, her students, and the man who had just changed her life. The children clapped, cheered, and laughed, and Eleanor realized that life's most unexpected moments could lead to the most profound transformations. 3 years passed. Eleanor, now 75, continued to teach at the school 2 days a week. She still thought of Thomas, still missed him fiercely, but her life had purpose again. On her apartment wall hung 2 photographs, one of Thomas at his retirement celebration, eyes bright with pride, and another of Eleanor and Ozzy in the school garden, smiling together. She often reflected on the day it all began, a simple act of dropping a pill bottle, a stranger noticing, and an unassuming act of kindness that spiraled into life-altering change. In the quiet of her apartment, she sometimes whispered a thank you to the universe, knowing that sometimes the darkest moments could lead to the brightest light. And it all started in a small pharmacy aisle in Beverly Hills, with a bottle of medication falling to the floor, 2 strangers, and a decision that changed everything.